Hello, everyone. As you roll in, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hello. So I know that because we postponed, some people aren't able to make it live, but I wrote down their questions. So I want to just start, and then Mia, my co-host, will let people in as they arrive as well. But I want to leave lots of time for the Q&A at the end because that's, I think, the most rewarding time for me, and really helps people personalize the advice as we go. Before we dive in, just a little bit about me. I am Cathy Madson. I am a certified dog trainer and canine behavior consultant. I run Pup Standing Academy and also work at their sister company, Preventive Vet. Um, and we haven't done a Yappy Hour, I feel like, Mia, for a long, long time, like since COVID, maybe.
It's been so long.
So
Like, yeah,
I'm
I
so
missed
excited.
it.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be back. These started during COVID as just a way to stay connected, and so bringing it back has been fun for me because I have clients all over the country. So to connect with our audience is great. But today I'm going to be talking about kind of the common holiday issues as we go into the Thanksgiving next week. Oh my God. And then the December holidays as those come up. We'll talk about kind of the common holiday dangers and then the behavior or training problems that we tend to see. We'll talk a lot about the safety and dealing with those risks through management, but then also through training. So some important training skills that can help. And then I think most importantly is how to decrease stress for all of us because the holidays are already stressful. And so adding in kind of managing pets, dogs and cats as people come over and just the hustle and bustle, it can be a lot to handle. So I want to talk about ways that we can decrease stress for our pets if there's lots going on. And then also for us as we deal with them on the holidays while people are over. And then Q&A. We got a lot of questions sent in, so I'm excited to go through those. If you do have any questions throughout, though, feel free to just pop it in the chat. I might not see it right away, but I will go back and read through those and when we get to the Q&A portion as well. And then also, just so you know, everyone who registered will get a link to this recording. And then also all of the bonus resources that we're sending out based on what we talked about. So you'll get a lot more in-depth kind of deep dives into each thing that I'm talking about, because otherwise we'd be on here for like hours and hours doing everything like nitpicky. So, all right, let's dive in. So risks and dangers, some of these are pretty obvious. Some of them aren't as well known. We've got our decorations and trees. So this can be, getting into chewing on the ornaments. Tinsel is a big problem. And then like garlands and stuff that you hang up or put out, little knickknacks. But chewing those, ingesting them is a big problem because usually if they get stuck, then you end up at the vet for thousands of dollars to get them out safely. So that's always a risk. And then we've got the toxic things that you might have out or family might have out during holidays, like poinsettias, mistletoe, holly, things like that, that you don't quite know whether it's good or bad. And honestly, you go onto Google and you can get like 10 different answers for everything about like, is it toxic? Is it not? And then how toxic is it? And what you have to do about it. So just you want to start thinking about what you're using to decorate and where those things are. And then also we have kind of the electricity and fire. So your power cords with all the lights, and then candles. I remember in college, I lived with a roommate and we decorated with a bunch of candles, and then her cat lit his tail on fire and then ran around the room on fire. And it was awful. The cat was fine, but the worst smell ever, and pretty traumatizing for everyone. And we don't want that to end up worse than it needs to be. So really thinking about where we're putting those things. And then we've got the food dangers. I got a lot of questions about this actually. What is safe to eat? What isn't safe for dogs and cats? So everyone kind of knows about chocolate for dogs, right? It's kind of like, oh, yep, chocolate's bad. There is a little bit more nuance to that as far as like dark chocolate versus milk chocolate versus white chocolate. But overall, avoiding it is the best practice. But how much they consume and then what type they consume can determine what your vet says to do. But it's always good to that. So we got chocolate and then raisins and grapes. A lot of people don't know about those. We don't want our dogs getting into that. And then artificial sweeteners. I think
Morning.
this is like the most important toxicity to know about, especially because a lot of us are baking over the holidays and maybe trying to be a little bit more healthy and not using sugar. We might be using sugar substitutes. Xylitol is super, super toxic. We want to avoid that at all costs. It can be fatal and very quickly. And so you really want to avoid that in all of your baking. It can be in things and all of those kinds of things. You want to check all of those ingredients all of the time. Make sure those aren't in there. We also want to avoid fatty and rich foods. This can lead to upset stomachs or pancreatitis, which is no fun. Humans can get that too. Also bones. So bones from the cooked meat, cooked bones, they can splinter and then cause injury. So again, I don't want you ending up at the vet on a holiday weekend because one, that will be very expensive for you and then really traumatizing for your dog. And we don't want that to happen to anyone. Other common risks and dangers we see gift wrapping supplies, so ribbons, string, and tape. Again, these are kind of that if they ingest them, they can cause blockages. String especially can be really troublesome in the GI tract. And then also the small gifts and toys can be, oh, those look like dog toys or cat toys, and then they start playing with them. So we want to make sure that we are managing these things, which we'll go through in a couple minutes. So training and behavior challenges, again, we're just going to overview this and we'll kind of dive deeper in a second. I think the biggest thing that people are worried about and the questions I got were the interactions with guests, which I totally understand because it can be really embarrassing when people come over and our dogs are not well behaved. But a lot of times our dogs just never have to deal with this, right? So people are coming into your house, your dog might be jumping on them at the front door or all of the time, depending on what they're doing. They might be begging during dinner time, during the meals, or like if you're passing around appetizers, the dog's like in heaven, honestly, at that point. Food everywhere. You might have some resource guarding issues if your dog has trouble with people approaching them when they have something they find valuable, whether that's their chews, their toys, their food bowl, even just their space. That can be a problem because people who aren't familiar with those issues in your home might accidentally increase the likelihood your dog's going to exhibit that or escalate it beyond what they normally would. So that can be a bite risk as well. Then we get things like door dashing. I had a couple questions about this too, about like, oh, the door opens and dog's like, yes, adventure. Also, cats can do this because they're like, I want to be an outdoor cat. And they run out the door. So that's a big problem. And it's really worrisome because what if you can't get them back, right? Um, Things that we might not think about. Little scavenging dogs and cats into people's coats or purses, or if they're staying over the weekend or for a few days, going into the luggage and like grabbing things they shouldn't, right? Whether that's medication or food or gum that might have xylitol in it. So there's some risk there because, again, people might not know what's good or bad for dogs and cats if they don't have any or they're visiting and things like that. We also have counter surfing. So, what is it? A Christmas Story with the Bumpus's dogs. Yeah. Going up and just eating the whole turkey. But jumping up on the table, onto counters, onto other places where you might have things where people set things down in your dog's or cat's reach. And then for cats, especially scratching and biting. If they're overwhelmed, overstimulated, then they can really not feel comfortable and react naturally for them, but not fun for us if they start scratching and biting at people. For those of us who joined just a few minutes late, no worries. But if you have questions, you can pop them in the chat, but we'll also have a lot of time at the end for Q&A. I think I saw some names that I recognize. Christina's here, one of my favorite people. She's a trainer on the East Coast. Love her. Welcome, welcome. Other training challenges. Just the crowds, loud noises, unfamiliar routines can really increase anxiety. So for a lot of dogs, just lots of sounds, all the movement, people really intruding onto their space, even cats as well. It can be really overwhelming, really overstimulating. So even if you have a dog who's really sociable, sometimes it's just too much, and then they don't know how to handle all of that energy and excitement and big feelings, and it just comes out in really inappropriate behavior. But it can also cause kind of long-term anxiety issues as well. And then one thing I want to mention too is if you have families who bring their pets with them, that can be a challenge. I know I've actually worked with a couple clients as far as like, hey, can we introduce my parents' dog to my new dog because I want to go over there for the holidays and bring the dog, et cetera, et cetera. So kind of managing those interactions, especially if you have cats and there's people bringing dogs over. Or vice versa. I don't know, Mia, you're the cat person, really. If you ever bring your cat to anyone's house, I
I do not
yeah,
because I just think everybody would want to steal him, but
that's true. He is very cute. I would.
he also doesn't enjoy the car. So we're
Yeah, like
working on
cats.
that.
Yeah, cats tend to have a little harder time traveling and being at other people's houses.
Yeah.
But who knows? If you're going on like a longer distance one, maybe. All right. So now let's kind of dive into the deeper parts of what do we do? What do we do about all of these risks and things? So honestly, to be very frank with you, you're not going to be able to do a lot of training and behavior modification before Thanksgiving because that's on Thursday. So you don't have enough time to teach your dog all of the things that are part of not jumping on people or go to place and things like that that we'll talk about. Now, I think for kind of the Christmas time holidays, the December holidays, I think you do have a lot of time. But because Thanksgiving's so close, and even for all the other holidays, I want you to really focus on management to set you and your pets up for success. So this is all about prevention. You want to prevent the unwanted behaviors. You want to prevent the risks that could happen to your dog or your cat, so that you don't end up having to go to the emergency vet or having family members or friends complain about your rude dog, things like that. So big thing here is separate and supervise. I am a huge fan of baby gates everywhere. I'm a huge fan of setting up a specific room or place for your pets to hang out where they can have yummy things to work on, things to do, white noise machines on. We'll talk about setting up a safe space, but really thinking about separation and then supervision. So have those gates up. Think about creating a door airlock. So like a freestanding gate, X pen, or setting up baby gates so that your dog or cat can't directly reach the door and straight outside, right? You really want something to block that because my dad did this last time he was over here, where he like walked out the front door and didn't close it. And I have gates, but he didn't even close the gate, right? So it's one of those things where I'm like, Dad, like, for goodness gracious, close the door. First off, there's two dogs in my house. And then if you're not going to close the door, at least close the gate, right? Now, again, investing in training to teach your dog to not run out an open door can be really helpful, which is the reason why my dogs didn't run out the door.
Hello.
Still want to
Yes,
manage
please. Archie.
the environment so that people cannot accidentally let your dog out the door, right? So really looking at how do you set that up. Auto closing gates are amazing, by the way. So I highly recommend those. Other things you can do for management, like say for jumping on people when they come through the door, leashing your dog, right? If you want your dog to be a part of the greetings, or if you don't have a place to put gates, then put a leash on your dog and have the leash in your hand, right? Or someone else has the dog so that they can't just rush up to people and jump on them. This is really important for the training aspect too. But again, it's just preventing the jumping part and running out the door. So really think about doing something like that. Or in some cases, tethering. So having your dog wear a harness and then connecting that to a leash that is tethered to the wall. Some people will put in like a clip into the wall or a really sturdy table or chair. So again, that's just preventing your dog from rushing up to people or running out the door. And in some places, I will have the dog tethered as far as you're staying over there so that you don't run over and beg, things like that. So think about management. Please have people put their coats and purses away, or store their luggage, right? So if they're staying with you overnight, really just talking to them like, hey, can you keep your door closed just so my dog doesn't come in and grab your stuff, or the cats don't come in and wake you up at 2 a.m. Because, you must feed them all of the time. So really communicate with guests. Putting those coats and purses away, again, keeps animals from going into the pockets and things like that and grabbing things they shouldn't. Secure your trash cans. So that way you prevent some trash diving. And then securing your decorations, trees, things like that. We'll talk about the Christmas tree in particular. Another thing as far as prevention is making sure your dog has ID on them. So wearing ID tags, as well as making sure they're microchipped and up to date on their microchip registration, which some people forget about if they move. Just making sure that you update that.
Some people don't even know that they have to register them. It's not even
Yeah.
just that you have them microchipped, you have to actually register them
Yep.
afterwards as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And every microchip company is a little different, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to send out a resource about microchipping. So if you're wondering about your pet's microchip, you can check it out. And Mia's very good at answering people's questions on that blog all the time. Okay. Okay, so quick slide on foods. Um, there's more to these lists, by the way. I just couldn't fit it all on one slide. But again, we will be sending out some resources that dive a little deeper into unsafe and safe kind of fruits and veggies and things like that for the holidays. But you really want to avoid things that have ingredients of toxic things for pets. So stuffing, which has things like onions or garlic, or your grapes, raisins, and currants, and some not grapes, currants maybe. Onions, garlic, hams because it can be really fatty. So again, we want to avoid that pancreatitis and really, really rich foods. Mashed potatoes, this often includes garlic in them. So again, that's really more about the ingredients that are mixed in. Corn on the cob because of the cob, right? Corn off the cob, it's fine. The cob, though, can really cause a lot of issues as far as ingesting it and it not breaking down very well in the GI tract. Yeast is a big problem, by the way. So if you're baking at home, I am not this like good at baking where I'm using actual yeast. But for those of you who are, really make sure that you're keeping those things out of reach from your pets, pre-cooked and post-cooked. So you want to make sure they don't have access to that. Chocolate, like we talked about, xylitol. Sometimes, Mia, this goes by birch sugar, right?
There's actually a bunch of different names that it goes by. And by the way, it's a natural, it's naturally found. So a lot of people see this and are like, well, chemical free, like is what I buy, but this is not a chemical. Um, so actually in our xylitol article, there's like at least 25 different names I want to say that it goes by.
Okay.
So we'll include that resource as well. But it's like, even if you buy something regularly, if you're planning on sharing it with your dog, I would say every single time you go, like look at the ingredients
Yeah.
every time, just to
For
play it safe.
sure. Yeah, and it can be in peanut butter. We know that. Like there can be a lot of peanut butters with it in there too. So it's definitely something to watch out for. And
Also, melatonin. I know some people give their dogs melatonin, but some melatonin also
has
has
xylitol in it. Yeah,
xylitol. Yeah, so have to be careful with everything.
totally. Life. And then this one might seem obvious to people, but alcohol. You don't want your pets getting into the alcohol. They metabolize things very differently than we do. So it can be very dangerous for them to get into, the holiday nog. Um, but things you can give your dog. So this is something where I'm like, I love creating little holiday treats for my dogs, or like little stuffed toys and stuff that are themed. And so you can give turkey, but please only the white meat, which is lower fat, in moderation. So again, not too much, because too much of anything outside of their normal diet is going to probably cause some upset in their tummies. So really make sure you're giving them the healthy part of the turkey. And then carrots, things like apples, green beans, peas, plain sweet potatoes. So the big thing here is don't give them things that are seasoned because again, higher salt content, you might have garlic powder and things like that. So really just plain veggies and other ingredients. The plain pumpkin puree is fine. Do not give them the pumpkin pie mix. That has stuff in there that they shouldn't have. So Christmas trees. This was a lot of questions come in about this. We will send you a specific article about Christmas trees and cats because they are a thing. And I have been on Zoom with Mia before, and she has been managing her cat who has been trying to climb their Christmas tree. So I know it happens to a lot of cat people. What you want to do both for dogs and cats is make sure it has a really super secure base, right? So it's not going to fall over if a dog bumps into it or if a cat jumps onto it. You want to make sure that that's solid. If you have a live tree, you want to make sure that the water in there, it's not accessible to your pets, especially if you don't use preservatives because they can be really toxic. But you want to make sure your cat or dog isn't going in there for that water because it's not good water for them. Prevent climbing. I know this can be hard, so do what you can. There's things like the Christmas tree defender, which you can kind of install on the tree to prevent cats from climbing up. It doesn't necessarily keep them from jumping on and climbing up, but it is an option. You can hang bells or things that might deter a cat if they jump on it. It's like and kind of makes noise, so they don't want to be on there. Or I think most importantly is meeting your cat's needs in other ways. So giving them other alternatives to climb on, maybe very, similar style, nice and tall, really enticing. Maybe put some catnip on there and the scratching posts and really try to make that the place that they climb. It's something cats do. So it's a basic need and we want to make sure those needs are met. And if we can give them an appropriate alternative behavior, that's ideal. And you tend to see if I meet that need in other ways, then this undesired behavior goes away. With that said, Christmas trees probably look super enticing and fun to a lot of cats, and that's just how they are. So we really want to just work on managing as much as we can, and then we can talk about training options too, teaching them to go somewhere else when you ask.
There's a toy that I use that's in the article that I've been using for the last 5 years that works every time, the second that I turn it on.
It's the
He's
feather toy, right?
Yeah, it's just a little electronic thing. You press it, it makes a little bit of noise, and it just kind of has little feather toys popping out of different.
Yeah.
And if I don't know where he is sometimes in the house, I'll turn it on just to have him come out. It has nothing to do with the tree, but
Yeah.
so that works. Or sometimes distracting with a wand toy. He's actually been really, really good lately.
Good. Well, yeah. And see, that's kind of interrupt, redirect the behavior.
Yeah.
Right. So that's really good. And yeah, that'll be in the article we send out for Christmas tree management with cats. You can see the toy that she uses. I remember that. You got that a while ago. Oh, I went backwards. There we go. Other things, block access to the tree, right? Especially if you have dogs that are like, well, I want everything on the tree. Put, a freestanding gate around it or an X fence. I know that's not super pretty, what can you do? But blocking access or putting up gates to that room so they just can't go in the room or keeping the door closed, things like that to just prevent access. Make sure you have cord protection on because you don't want your kitties or your dogs chewing up on the cords and electrocuting themselves or starting fires. That wouldn't be good either. Use shatterproof ornaments, right? Really think about if you have treasured glass ornaments and you have cats or dogs who are must be involved, maybe don't hang those on your tree if they have access to that tree. I really don't want them breaking those precious things that you might have. And then sometimes there's been some of our readers and clients who said that slimmer tree types are less fun, their cats don't want to climb the slimmer type trees. So really think about the design if that helps. Okay, creating a safe space. I feel like I'm rushing through because I want to get to Q&A. That's okay. I might just lose my voice talking so much. So creating a safe space. This is kind of talking about if you have guests coming over, really, really important to do for both dogs and cats. You want to make sure this is a place that's away from the hustle bustle, all the noise, all the activity. someplace that your dog and cat are already familiar with. So don't choose a room that they never use now and expect them to be comfortable right away in there. Make sure that there's food and water. Noise masking. So this can really help with dogs who are like major FOMO. I got to be involved and I hear people out there and what's happening without me. Masking the noises. So having a white noise machine on or a box fan kind of facing the door that provides white noise, but also disrupts sound waves in the air. Or having the TV on or the radio, or I just leave NPR on for my dogs a lot of time because all of those DJs have such like calming voices. So really think about masking the noises to help them settle and to block any kind of exciting noise. Calming pheromones. So for dogs, this is Thunder Ease is kind of the new brand name, but it used to be Adaptil. So sometimes you see it still branded as Adaptil, but Thunder Shirt bought it, so they renamed it Thunder Ease. And those come in diffusers, which are really great, or there's sprays or like a collar. Honestly, if you're setting up a safe space, diffuser can work really well. And then for cats, there is Feel Away is the brand for the calming pheromones. If you have multiple cats, they have one specifically for multiple cats versus just one cat. So really look at which one you're buying. There have been really good reports about how pheromones can help calm things down. It is one of those things that like can help, won't hurt, but some of my clients are like, I didn't see a difference, right? It just depends on the dog and how they react to that. Other things you want in your safe space, enrichment items. We're going to talk about enrichment in a little bit too. Giving your dog or cat something to do in there that is kind of self-soothing and keeps them busy and burns some energy, right? Rather than them like sitting at the door going, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? Like, oh, I'm going to be working on my chew toy or a stuffed Kong or whatever it is. So making sure that they have something to do to keep them entertained if they're not just napping and resting. And then you want to think about how do I keep people from just swinging this door open, and letting my cats out or letting the dog out. Or if the dog doesn't do well with strangers in the home, definitely not letting the dog out or scaring them in their safe space. So is this locking the door? Could be in more extreme cases. Putting up a do not disturb sign or some kind of sign that says don't enter. And in some cases, I do recommend gates, like putting up a baby gate in the doorway so that even if the door opens, the dog can't rush out. This can be a good kind of secondary protected contact aspect if you are worried about your dog interacting with people, especially if there's kids coming over. Sometimes like kids are just like, I'm going to explore, play hide and seek or whatever it is. And you want to kind of create levels of barriers for places you don't want them going. So really thinking about that. Okay, training. Like I said, honestly, Thanksgiving's on Thursday. So you're not going to be able to train a lot of these to like full potential by Thursday. Doesn't mean you can't start now. I'm always like, yes, start now. But I think on Thursday, if you're having people over, really rely on the management, heavily rely on management to prevent the unwanted behavior. And then before the December holidays, you can really dive into the training so that then you can test it on the holidays and get people to help you practice. But one of my favorite things to teach for preventing door dashing, for preventing jumping on people, for getting out of the way when you're cooking, for not begging at the table, lots of different uses for this is go to place. So like go to your bed and lay down and stay there, or go to a certain station or whatever it is. You train your dog, go to that spot and stay. Some of my clients, we've done this where we've trained it where the doorbell rings and that itself is the cue to go to the bed and stay. That takes a little bit more, effort, but totally doable. So you will be getting follow-up resources for kind of each of these skills. Again, if I was to dive into all of them now, we'd be here all day. So, so go to place is really a chain of behaviors, which is find your bed or your place, go to it, put all 4 feet on it, sit on it, lay down, stay until I release you, right? Or ask for something else. So that's what we call a chain of behaviors. So if your dog already has sit down and stay, awesome. So you can start training those first, and then you can kind of build the go to place from there. But there's a few ways to train this. My favorite way is it's using free shaping, because I can sit there with a glass of wine and really just tell my dog yes. when they get something right and build the behavior from zero. The dog's doing most of the work. You're going to see that video of my dog doing this in the resource that I'll send out for you. But this can be a really helpful skill, especially during dinner time, to prevent the begging and prevent the dog from under the table grabbing any scraps that fall off. Or when there's kids. I did this as a kid. I was like, oh, the dog needs some food. Totally what I did. I'm guilty. Something that might actually work for you for Thursday is sitting for attention. So again, this is kind of something to do instead of jumping on people. If you have your dog on leash or they're behind a gate and you have the energy and the brain bandwidth to do this, you can ask your guest to practice this with your dog on Thursday, where you say, hey, we're working on not jumping. Your dog's on a leash so they can't jump, or behind the gate so they can't jump. That's the number one rule. Your guest asks your dog to sit, and then they can reward them with a treat, or honestly just attention, right? Because that's kind of what they really want. They want attention. They want to be involved. So really coaching your guests on how to do it. However, you do not have to do this while you're also trying to cook dinner and like hang out with guests and have a life. You are allowed to just manage it, right? Don't put a lot of extra pressure on yourself if you can just prevent the jumping, right? And maybe your dog's in their safe space for a while until everyone kind of calms down and the greetings are all done and the excitement's kind of a little bit lower. Then your dog can come out when the energy is easier for them to handle. So maybe something to practice, but maybe something that you just want to practice after Thanksgiving, right? When you have the time in your brain. I love this for retrievers or a lot of dogs. People come to the door and instead of jumping, you teach them to retrieve a toy. Excuse me, I'm recovering from a cold. It's really cute because they're like, I'm doing what I was bred to do, and I went and grabbed my toy, and so you can tell them like, oh, go get your toy, and they'll get it, and they'll look so proud when they bring it over. You can also practice drop it and leave it. This is really good for if they grab something they shouldn't have, like a decoration or food, or leave it if you see them kind of, starting to go over to the counter, things like that. So teaching them some impulse control behaviors and just management behaviors that help you deal with it if it happens. Practicing stay at the front door, whether it's a sit stay or down stay, I don't care. I don't care if it's a stand stay or just stay behind the threshold, teaching them not to rush out the door. And then recall at the front door in particular, right? They might have good recall in the backyard. Cool. Practice it at the front door on a long leash, right? Over and over again. Because if they do get out, you want to be able to call them back in that scenario, in that environment, right? That location. So really thinking about, if I need to call you from the front door, are you going to do it? Something to think about. This is an example of drop it. This is actually my brother's dog. They got him last November. He's a McNab, and if you know anything about McNabs, they're a really intense herding breed in California. So my brother lives in Southern California, and they're practicing drop it at a big gathering.
Now hold on to it. Yeah. Get it. Bring it back. Good boy. He's like, oh my goodness, I won. I won. Oh, I didn't get it. I go get it. I go get it. I go get it. Oh, good boy. You got it. You got it. Hold on to it. Don't hold on to it. Oh, you go get it. Drop it. Yeah, good boy. Get it. Good job.
So drop it using a toy is super fun to teach. Actually, I prefer to teach it with tug rather than food, actually, all around. So with Bandit, I had just met Bandit that day. And of course, I'm the person who's like, instead of out talking with the people, I'm like in the kitchen with the dog. That is who I am. But I was like, let's practice drop it because my sister-in-law had said like, hey, sometimes he grabs stuff and runs away. What do I do? And I'm like, well, easy. We just have to teach him what to do. He doesn't know it yet. So using toy, you play tug, you let your dog win sometimes. I let him win tug, right? So that he wants to play with me versus like, who wants to play a game they never win? So let the dog win. They bring it back. Amazing. You want to wait till they have a good hold on it. And then you kind of freeze and you get boring and you say, drop it just once and you wait. It took him just a couple seconds to be like, well, this is boring. And he let go. And the reward was more toy play. So they learn that drop it means let go of the thing in my mouth and I get it back, right? In most cases, if we're playing with toys. And then sometimes you don't. So that's a really intro way to start practicing drop it. But do not expect your dog to drop something if you have not practiced. You start with really low value kind of toys and items, and then you start working towards higher value things that they have to drop. If they grab a turkey leg and you say drop it, and you haven't practiced high value drop its, they're probably not going to drop it, right? So in that scenario, I run over to the refrigerator and I grab some cheese and I start having a party all by myself. And I'm like, oh my God, look what you're missing out on. I'm having a great, great time. And a lot of times the dogs are gonna be like, wait, what do you have? And they go, and they spit out the thing and they run over and they eat the thing. So I want you to really think about, what does my dog know? And I'm only going to ask them for what they know. And if they don't know it, I'm going to figure out another way to make it happen. Right. Resource guarding. So I specialize in resource guarding, dog aggression and anxiety. And majority of my aggression cases are resource guarding. Resource guarding is a totally normal dog behavior, but I wanted to briefly talk about it here because if you have guests coming over, then you might see regression in resource guarding, even if you've worked on it before. And I want to make sure everyone's safe. So you have to know your dog's triggers. Do they guard their food bowl? Do they guard all of their toys, just certain toys, just certain chews? Is it their crate space or, the couch space? What do they guard? You have to know this. And then once you know that, you have to intensely manage it. You do not want them to have a super high value chew when other people are around if that's what they guard, because unfamiliar people approaching that are going to increase the severity of their guarding versus a familiar person. Right. Also, friends and family won't know how to approach a dog or that they even guard it. Right. So they might not actually be reaching to grab it. They might just be going to pet your dog and all of a sudden there's a bite. And we want to prevent bites as much as possible. So really managing those resources, meaning they aren't available at all when people are over, or blocking off certain areas like closing the crate so they can't go in the crate, or closing doors of if they guard things in there, stuff like that. You really want to manage that. If you need to feed them while people are over or give them like a work to eat toy, then do it in their safe space, somewhere separate and calm, and really make sure that's when you lock the door, you have that extra gate. Communicate with your guests if your dog has guarding issues with things that will be present when they're there. Another thing to communicate with guests is if your dog doesn't like being pet or handled, which is most dogs, by the way. When unfamiliar people are there, they don't always love it when they're all over them. But you want to communicate with guests that like, hey, this is my dog's thing, so you could really help me out by doing this. Especially with children, it's better to just manage, because children sometimes they're just too young to understand or they forget because they're kids. You want to start behavior modification with a professional as soon as you can. I'm always happy to help people find someone in their local area if they prefer in person. But we also do have an online course for resource guarding, both self-paced and ones that include virtual consults with me. But it is a common problem, but it's definitely something there's plenty of success stories because there are ways to help your dog through this. It just takes time. And then consider extra precautions. So things like muzzles can be really helpful. Again, if you're like, no, I don't have a place for my dog to be totally separate, or I'm bringing my dog with me to a family's house or friend's house, then preventing bites with things like muzzles. This is a Trust Your Dog custom muzzle. I really like this one. This is bite proof. And then this is kind of the typical one you see at the big box pet stores. This is Baskerville's basket muzzle. This is not technically fully bite proof, but better than nothing. So really consider those kinds of higher level management if you are worried about aggression between your dog and people or between your dog and other pets that you might see. Okay, decreasing stress and anxiety. Have a plan. Think about what causes my dog or cat stress and what am I going to do about it to prepare and try to prevent that or reduce it as much as possible. Please, please, please talk to your vet about supplements. You don't want to just start giving your dog supplements without talking to your vet or just mentioning it to your vet, especially if they're already on prescription meds, because there can be interactions between those things. But talk to them about calming supplements. I'm a huge fan of behavior meds. They can work wonders. So really thinking about if your dog has or cat has severe anxiety, then we need to address that on a chemical level before we can even really see progress on, the training or behavior modification level. And especially because the holidays are coming up right now. thinking about talking to your vet about not only a longer acting medication if they have generalized anxiety, something like Prozac, or like there's all different kinds of meds. We're going to send you a resource that one of our veterinarians wrote up. But there's short acting medications. So things like Xanax, Trazodone, gabapentin, things that can help your dog or cat in that, like for Thanksgiving or for a particular dinner that you might be doing, beyond just kind of starting a longer acting one. Use the safe space. Use it. Your dog does not have to be a part of the gathering. They don't, right? If it causes them stress or if it causes you stress, that's fine. They can be totally separate the whole time as long as you're providing them with things to do. Make sure that they're exercise beforehand, exercise afterwards, all of that stuff. But use that safe space. Communicate to guests, right? Say, hey, this is really hard. We're not going to go downstairs because the cats are in a room downstairs, and we don't bother them there. For Super Bowl, like we go over to our fantasy football leagues, there's a house and they have cats and they're in a corner of the house in a room and we just leave it alone, right? And the kids that are, we leave it alone. So trying to create some space by just telling people where to avoid. Staying consistent with your routine is incredibly important for dogs and cats. So try to really keep meal times, walks, potty breaks, all those things kind of on the regular, what they're used to provide that consistency and predictability, even though other things are changing. What can be really helpful is assigning someone, if you have family members, one person's job is to just be in charge of the dog, right? Or in charge of making sure that cats are okay. I make Jesse, my partner, he does this on Thanksgiving. I cook, and his job is to make sure the dogs aren't misbehaving. So it's really nice to not have to be worried about all the things. Provide lots of extra enrichment for your dogs and cats. And then when you get frustrated, this will happen. We all get frustrated with our pets. They can be really annoying. They make up for it in so many ways, but they can be really annoying. So one, take a deep breath. One way I've dealt with this is I swear at them in a very happy voice, right? Where I'm like, oh, I'm losing my mind, but I love you. And then, so at least you're kind of letting it out. But it can be really embarrassing if someone else sees it. So how you react actually matters a lot more than, what your dog did. Because we trainers, I think, we judge people more on how they react to bad behavior rather than that their dog or cat has bad behavior. Dogs and cats aren't machines. They're just doing dog and cat things, right? And a lot of bad behaviors aren't bad behaviors to them, right? They're just being who they are. For us, it's dealing with how do I integrate this totally different species into something that's so human, like Thanksgiving dinner, and overwhelming. Like, how do I help them understand how to behave? So how you react can, one, not only help with training and behavior in the long run, but it can decrease your frustration too if you just reframe it. You go, my dog is struggling, my cat is struggling, what can I do to help them out? Right. And then you can also kind of use this as a way to model for other people how to deal with really frustrating things. Taking deep breaths, interrupt, redirect. So if your dog or cat does something you don't like, oh, we're not going to do that right now. That's really super annoying. Here we go, honey. Let's go over here. That's super rude. We don't do that. This is why you have no friends. Like, walk them to their safe space and put them away, or give them something to chew on in their safe space. Use that management, right? Use that separation. Interrupt the behavior you don't want gently, calmly, right? Because yelling no usually doesn't do anything. And then redirect them. Take them to something else to do that isn't the thing you don't want them to do, right? So that kind of switch in your framework goes a long way in preventing frustration. You will still feel frustrated sometimes. It's normal. Don't judge yourself. But I always just try to make a joke out of it, with people, or like, hey, I'm really sorry. It's something we're working on. I couldn't finish it right, in the last day before Thanksgiving. So, I'm so sorry, I'm going to put them away, right? Or coaching people to help you. A lot of times, hey, can you help me with this jumping thing? Here's what we do. Here's what we don't do. People are usually more than happy to help if they're over, especially if you're feeding them dinner, I would think. Hey, enrichment. I love enrichment. I don't think enough people do enrichment because honestly, it prevents so many behavior problems because we're meeting the animal's needs. So for dogs and cats, enrichment is really the core of it is meeting their instinctual drives, the things that they need to do as dogs, dog things. So outlets for natural behavior, running, digging, sniffing, chewing is really important. They need to chew. If you think about even just the breed groups within dogs as a whole, you're thinking about, okay, terriers, they need to go after vermin. If they're schnauzers, it's what we bred them to do. Like, you think about what was the historical job for my dog's breed or breed mix, and how can I give them an outlet for that? If you have a livestock guardian breed, honestly, sometimes just sitting outside in the yard and watching and guarding is really good enrichment. It's meeting that genetic drive that they have. So really thinking about what to do. In the enrichment handout we'll send you, there is a great it's a little quiz, but you just put in your dog's main breed or breed mix, and it will send you like a personalized by breed group, like here's some great enrichment activities to try out and see if it helps meet those needs that your dog has. But things that are naturally calming for dogs, licking, chewing, and sniffing. So repetitive kind of behavior. If you think about it, if I knit, kind of a naturally calming behavior. So really thinking about how do I help them decompress and calm down in their safe space, or after dinner where they're all amped up and crazy after everyone leaves, like let's give them something to do that helps calm them down. For cats, again, enrichment's about meeting their needs. There's less variation between breed groups for cats compared to dogs because we didn't tinker around with their breeds as much. But it's really about what we call the predatory sequence. So giving them the hunting experience and really completing the predatory sequence too. So preventing frustration by like, oh, you get to chase the toy, but you never get to catch and eat the toy. So we will send you something about the predatory sequence. Leanna, our amazing cat behavior consultant on staff, she created a great outline of how to do this. So for example, if you get them out of the Christmas tree and you play with the wand toy, okay, well then play with that, let them catch something at the end. So then grab a toy for them to catch and then give them food, because then they complete the whole sequence of I chased something, I caught something, I killed it, and then I ate it. So you want to complete that predatory sequence. So that's a great way to burn energy, but also kind of meet those needs. And then things like scratching, right? Making sure they have a lot of different scratching places to go. This can help prevent scratching and other things. And then catnip, always fun. Really quickly too, we're almost to Q&A, I promise. Holiday travel. For most pets, it's best to stay home. I am always going to be on the side of, if you can leave them at home, please do. Because they are familiar with home. They are comfortable at home, especially for cats. Cats are very much like bonded to their home. When we have separation anxiety issues with cats, it's almost never from people, it's from a place. And it's usually home. So we want to make sure that our pets are in a comfortable area in their regular routine as much as possible. Now, that might be hard if they do have true separation anxiety from you. Then maybe if it's possible, they can travel with you depending on where you're going. But it can be tough. So finding a pet sitter or boarding facility. So I much prefer in-home pet sitters. They are really hard to find and they're very expensive. I know this from experience, but I think behaviorally it's very much worth it. However, some dogs and some cats can do okay going to a boarding facility. You really want to make sure it's one you trust. It's honestly really, really hard. I get it. And I don't have tons of tips beyond networking, asking friends and family, asking around on social, asking your vet or your local dog trainer. I get a lot of inquiries from clients like, who do you use? And I'm like, I can't tell you because I don't want her to be busy when I need her. Things like that. So really networking in your area to find someone you trust. But I have a couple people on my referral list. So local trainers might have someone. And in some cases, if you have a harder behavioral case, in some cases, trainers can board your dog at their home or stay in your home. It just depends, right? So really asking around and finding something. I'm not a huge fan of Rover unless you are very, very good at doing your due diligence and really diving deep into people's experience and their insurance, things like that. There's a lot of things you got to be careful of on those kinds of platforms. And then book early. I know it's honestly at this point, it's probably too late to book for this year's holiday season, whether it's boarding or with pet sitters, but book as early as you can for next year. Do you know that you're going out of town or anything like that? Car travel, please, please, please make sure your dog or cat is secure and safe in the car. So for dogs, the best way is in a crash tested crate. So things like the Gunner crates. I think Roughland is also crash tested. I'd have to look, but again, we'll send you some resources. But honestly, I know in my car, I can't even fit a crate. So I buckle in my dogs. I use Sleepy Pod harness and seatbelt. So again, those are crash tested, but something is better than nothing, right? So do what you can, just make sure they're seatbelted in or in a carrier if they're small enough, and then seatbelt the carrier in so that's not flying around. And then for cats, secure in that carrier. Take a lot of frequent rest stops if you're going on a like longer drive. And for really long trips, I highly recommend checking out sniff spots along the way for your dogs. So it's just a way to rent someone's backyard or area, and you can, filter it out by fenced and, do you see people, do you not see people? My reactive dog clients use this all the time for enrichment, but really, really good for long car trips to let your dog run off leash if it's secure, and you have some potty time and just stretch their legs along with you, getting to stretch your legs. Air travel, honestly, super extremely stressful for all pets. I don't recommend it. If you do have to do it, then you have to do it, right? But know your airline's requirements. They can change from airline to airline. More and more airlines aren't allowing certain breeds in cargo or even in cabin. So you really need to know kind of what your options are. I would much prefer a long drive over shipping a dog in cargo. It's so stressful for them and for you. Excuse me. With that, did I talk fast enough, Mia? I don't even know what time it is. Holy cow. Whew.
You did great. You got a lot of stuff in there.
A lot of stuff. But again, we're going to have follow-up resources that dive deeper in each thing, and then Q&A, we're going to dive deeper too. So please check out our digital books. I am super excited. We just released our new Senior Dog 101 Tips Comfort and Care. I am the co-author on that with our lovely Dr. Beth Turner. We just released that, but it's a part of our now five book pack that we have available digitally
as well.
Yeah, so we have one on senior cats too, cat health and safety, and then the dogs, it's the senior dog, dog health and safety, and then also the like new dog behavior and training one. So lots of fun tips that make great holiday presents, but they're awesome, quick and easy to do. So some great info there, and then also pupstanding.com for my virtual training and behavior sessions. I am available for you for whatever you need. Wait for Black Friday because I'm having a sale on those. Just a little tidbit. But yes, also please follow us on social. Mia knows how hard I've been working. I just launched socials for
So
Instagram at Pup Standing, and then Facebook, just search Pup Standing Academy. That's where your Black Friday deal is going to be available. You got to follow us on social for that. And then always happy to answer any questions over email. Or like find you referrals for what you need. But Cathy at pupstandingacademy.com is how to reach that. Okay. Let's see. I gotta check the chat, and then I'm gonna pull up. I put all of the questions into a doc for me. But if you have questions, please feel free to, let's see.
We had a lot of good questions come in through the form.
Yes, we did. Okay. Trying to find the right thing on my screen. Yeah, I'm not sharing screen anymore, right?
Correct.
I was like, otherwise you're going to be very confused about what you're seeing. Okay, so first question that came in. Some of them are kind of the same things that we went over, so I might mention them, but then refer back. But if you do have a question here live, please feel free to pop in the chat, and then we might unmute you and find out more. But our first question was from Gina. Hi, I would love some advice on the best things to feed my small dogs and how much to feed them. I'm interested in prepared food services, but I'm not sure I can afford them. Yeah. Are there healthy foods you can buy at pet stores? I'm confused by freeze-dried patties and others. I've been cooking for them, but I'm not sure if they're getting all the nutrients they need. My dogs are 9 and 11 pounds, and then 7 and 10 years old. Okay, this is a really good question. Now, the best person to ask would be your dog's vet. So one, always talk to your vet about the food you're feeding your dog. However, I understand some people are kind of worried about that because they're like, well, my vet just recommends what they sell. I get it. If you are cooking food for your dog, it is likely they're not getting the nutrients they need. If you are cooking for your dog, it needs to be a recipe created by a veterinary nutritionist to ensure they're getting all of the nutrients and minerals and vitamins that they need, and making sure that that's complete and balanced, right? Complete and balanced is kind of the keyword in the dog food industry. So you want to make sure if you're going to keep cooking for them, or if you want to keep start cooking fresh food for your dogs, that you're following a recipe created by a certified professional. So that's number one. I am also in the camp. I tell people, they go, oh, should I feed raw? Should I feed fresh? Like, I don't want to do kibble. Here's my thing. Feed your dog what you can afford, the best quality you can afford, and feed them something that they thrive on. If that's kibble, great. If that's fresh food and you have the time and energy to do it and it's complete and balanced, great. If it's raw, great, right? If you can handle with all the things that come along with raw feeding, right? As long as your dog is healthy and thriving, feed them what you want to feed them.
And that's exactly what Dr. Beth would say too, or has said. Like, and you'll notice by their activity level, their skin and
Mhm.
coat, and
Yeah.
their poops. It all
Yeah.
comes back to the poops.
Yeah, seriously. It's all about the poop. So yeah, you're looking at what does my dog thrive on? So that's kind of like, okay, well, patties versus freeze dried with whatever. Now, some of those are more affordable than others. Some of them your dog might prefer more than others. So it really depends on kind of what you can do and what you're willing to do. But I am never gonna make someone feel bad for feeding just kibble if that's what they can afford and their dog's thriving on it. Great. Right. Now, how much to feed? That's a great question. It is so dependent on each individual dog. So, Mia, if we can make a note on sending out the how much and how often to feed our dog, we have a great blog for this where we created an easy to use calculator for your dogs on their calorie needs. So, based on their activity level, their size, their age, things like that. So it gives you just a baseline to start working from. It's not like the end all be all number. It's just this is where to really start making sure your dog's getting enough, and not too much. Honestly, that's more of a problem than too little. So starting there with just how many calories baseline does my dog probably need, and then adjusting, and then really looking at, okay, well, the patties, this is how many calories are in that, and how long would that last me a week, how long would raw last, things like that. So you're really just kind of looking at, what do I do? Like based on what's available in this, what my dog needs calorie wise. So we'll send that out. But it really is dependent on each individual dog, their activity level, their age. For example, my dog, Suki, she's almost 15. She now only eats about 2/3 cup of her dry food a day, split into 2 meals, versus Fozzie Bear, my 4-year-old, same breed, but bigger and younger. He eats a cup and 2/3 a day of his dry food. And then I mix in some stuff so then they have their fish oil, and then they have their wet food mixed in, or sometimes it's Greek yogurt, right? So it's really kind of looking at maintaining a good body condition. So how heavy they are and how healthy they are, and then what they thrive on. So hopefully that answers her question. Okay. Bill, will you let me know if you see anything pop up in chat, please? Thank you. Is Mavis there with you? Mia has Mavis, who is kind of new. Her face is smushed in a pillow. She's a bulldog and she's adorable.
Yeah, she's napping.
She's so cute. Oh my God. If you all have pets with you, please feel free to just shove them in the camera for me. Okay. From Jocelyn. Oh, I know Jocelyn and her dog Riley. I've worked with them. They live very close to me. She asked, my dog wants to sleep all day. Suggestions for indoor activities during winter. So Riley is a pity mix. She's adorable. it is normal for your dog to want to sleep a lot. Dogs sleep a lot. So as long as we're not seeing destructive behavior or other kind of issues popping up from lack of exercise, I'm not going to be super worried if the dog is sleeping during the day. But if they're like really amped up at night, then okay, maybe we need to add some more exercise during the day. Rule of thumb, by the way, is 30 minutes a day for dogs, but that's like small dogs. It depends on your dog's breed and their age and their individual needs, right? So you want to kind of aim 30 minutes minimum, and then some dogs need like 2 to 3 hours. If you have a Malinois, it's just all day. That's what you do. But for indoor activities for winter to kind of burn energy, I really like flirt poles. So these are just like giant cat toys for dogs. And you can get ones that like telescope down so you can play them in smaller areas. If you have a big dog, you would need kind of more space to play with that. But that's a great way to burn energy really fast and also satisfy their predatory sequence for dogs, because dogs have one just like cats. So I really like foot pulls. Training, little quick 2-minute training sessions, great way to burn energy, right? It's working their brain and their body. You can kind of have them doing sit down, stand, and that's a push-up, right? You can also do things like canine conditioning and fitness exercises. These are really, really good for all dogs for body awareness and injury prevention, but also rehab. But really good, especially for dogs as they're aging, because it helps maintain muscle mass, which is something that they lose naturally as they age. So kind of keeping them strong and keeping their core strong and things like that. So canine conditioning, if you look that up, Anna Lee Sanders online, she runs a great group on Facebook. Canine conditioning, I think it's called. Don't quote me. But she also, I think it's Canine Conditioning Coach is her website, and she has a bunch of free exercises available, as well as like paid programs that you can do self-paced. But I really, really like that for dogs. So yeah, just kind of thinking about just ways to play indoors, ways to get them moving indoors, training, and then fitness is kind of what I go to. But overall, dogs sleep a lot, like 18 hours a day. So it's not abnormal to see them kind of just hunker down. Also, it's winter. I want to hunker down all day. So
I would say also, and I think you may have taught me this, but Mavis just had double knee surgery
yeah.
and was like not able to move. Like she was on very, very restricted rest for weeks. Um, and also, she's not a small girl. We love her just the way she is, but she's a little thick. And so especially without her being able to go for walks, um, just taking aside some of her kibble portion,
Mhm.
um, and using that for training, like that exercised her brain a lot, just sitting in her bed and me having her do like touch with her nose and give me
Yeah.
her chin and just hold it there. She doesn't do high five, but I learned she does high chin, where if I do this and say hi chin, she'll do one of these. So we're rolling with that. But like it was amazing to me how much that like kind
Yeah.
of wore her out.
Yeah. It's pretty, I mean, if we have to take a test or like write, a big essay, like we're tired afterwards, right? So it's a good way to balance out. And then if they can move around, not like Mavis, but like teaching tricks, like, go in the middle or do circles or spins, just stuff to get moving a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. And then Shannon had a question, help with dogs meeting new dogs during family visits. Yes. I usually don't recommend doing this unless you have a chance to do it ahead of time, because usually during family visits, you want to just enjoy yourself, and enjoy hanging out with your family. Separation, lots of separated space. So having X pens and things where they can be together, but not in each other's face, is the big thing when they're inside. I always recommend doing parallel walks outside first. I don't want them to just meet each other right away, because even if they love other dogs, like it's just gonna be a lot of energy and excitement. So I want to encourage calm interactions. And I don't want it to start out with play. I want it to just start out with walk and chill. So walking parallel, that can be like you're across the street from each other, like horizontally, you know, and then you slowly get closer, or it could be one dog's in front, you know, and you slowly get closer, and then the other way you let them smell where the other one peed and all that stuff. So you let them get comfortable with each other in a more controlled, calm way. And then if they're doing well, you can, you know, let them play a little bit. So kind of build that relationship there with them. New dogs, it's really just figuring out, you know, do they communicate well? Are they listening to each other when the other one's saying, hey, stop it? It is totally normal for dogs to use what we call ritualized aggression, meaning, stop that, is normal communication and not something to punish. If the other dog doesn't listen to a lip raise or a growl, that's a problem from the other dog because they're going, I don't care that that bothers you. Or if they're young and stupid and they don't know what it means. You know, they keep going and then there's a fight. So I want to see communication and I want to see them giving appropriate warnings and signals of what's okay and what's not. And then I want to see the other dog listening to those, right? So it's the back and forth that I'm looking for. If I'm not seeing that, a lot of separation, a lot of management. Even if I am seeing that, if I'm just managing resources a lot when there's two dogs that aren't super familiar with each other. Resources are the number one thing that cause fights. I mean, honestly, like 98% of fights are over resources. Whether that's people, whether that's space, the kitchen, even if there's no food on the floor, just the fact that food gets prepared there can be a trigger for a lot of dogs towards other dogs. So that's again where I look at, are there gates and things just so that when you can't be constantly supervising them and managing them intensely, let's just separate them and give them something to do, give them a chew to calm down with or whatever, so that they're getting enrichment and decompression. And then when I can supervise them, then they can be out together, or maybe they're on leash together, right? So really making sure you're just managing those. But I recommend starting out with the parallel walk. If it's not going well, then don't have them meet. If one dog is really, really reactive, this is where knowing your dog can be important. Some dogs are very reactive, but it's frustration based, meaning they actually do well with the dog. When they meet them, they're just really frustrated. They can't go up to them. Other dogs are like, I hate other dogs. They scare me or they overwhelm me. I don't want to do it. So that's again where you think about what are my next steps? Is it more of an off leash or dragging leash kind of greeting? Or is it not greeting at all? So honestly, if you are taking your dog to someone's house or they're bringing their dog, reach out to me via email. So Cathy at pupstandingacademy.com. And I can kind of give you some examples as far as those things to do specific to your dog. Great question. Nuri, I think is how I say that name. How do you stop dogs from humping even when fixed? So I will add this resource to our resources that we're going to send out. Humping is honestly the most common reason for humping is stress. So I'm looking at what's triggering the humping. There's a lot of people over, I'm really overstimulated, and I don't know what to do. And so I'm going to hump because it's a release of energy and it makes me feel good, right? So it's just this expenditure of energy and anxiety. And not all stress is bad stress. Sometimes they're like very excited and they just don't know what to do. But other times they're like, I don't know what to do. I got to get out of here. I'm going to do this. So interrupt, redirect. This is not something to yell at them for. It can be embarrassing if they do it to people. But you interrupt, redirect them, give them something to hump that's okay. But if it's stress-based, they need to be in a safe space. You need to figure out how do I address this stress.
Did she go back up?
So you're really looking at, do I need to talk to the vet about supplements and medications if my dog is kind of constantly humping in different environments, right? If it's once a year over Thanksgiving or a holiday dinner, well, then maybe it's a short-acting bed, right? Or maybe it is using that safe space and really making sure we're reducing the stress, or working through behavior modification with a professional about helping your dog not be so overstimulated, right? So think about interrupt, redirect, and try to identify the trigger for the humping. Again, almost always stress. Other causes of humping, it's a normal part of play for dogs. It can be a way to initiate play with another dog, but again, it can also be an overstimulation during play. I'm so amped up and I have no brain right now, so I'm just going to hump. That can happen too in play, but it's not abnormal behavior. It's not gross, but we're always like, ew, so gross. We humans. Very rarely is it actually like sexually driven. or hormonally driven. Again, if they're fixed, that's usually not what it is. However, sometimes we see neutered males hump intact males because of the difference in hormones, or a neutered male trying to hump a female in heat or close to going in heat because, again, they just smell that difference. So I would say identify the cause, interrupt, redirect, and really look at longer term, what can I do to reduce this happening? But I'll add in the humping resource to the bonus resources we'll send out. But yeah, it's a normal behavior, but it tells you that there's something going on as we go. Okay, got the ones in chat so far. Okay. From Judy with her dog Georgie. She's in my Puppy Manners 2 class. She just asked the Christmas tree. So hopefully the Christmas tree stuff, blocking it. Teaching go to place can be a really good one. Making sure that you're doing that. We covered that. From Angela, who has, Maui and Moana. I have Moana in my Puppy Manners 1 class, and then Maui's in my coworkers class. Tips for managing overstimulation from large gatherings. So they have collies. They have a smooth-coated collie and then a rough coat, and they're siblings. Some dogs are way more triggered and overstimulated by large gatherings than others. Herding breeds in particular, because I have herding breeds. They're like, oh, everything's moving and I can't handle it and no one's staying where they should stay, so they're having a hard time dealing with that overstimulation. So again, a lot of exercise enrichment before, safe space during, enrichment during, decompression enrichment, and exercise after. But really managing short little, like, honestly, for those 2 dogs, it's really about short interactions, if interacting at all. Maui's probably a little bit more into meeting people, and Moana is less so. Like, she has yet to really come up to me and ask for pets in class, even though I literally throw food at her all the time. But the more I've been throwing food at her, the more she's like, okay, I think I'll come up to you. But really managing people as far as like, please don't interact with my dog. Just ignore my dog. Right? Like, that can be really overwhelming. And then herding breeds get really barky, and then people are like, oh my God. So safe space is a big thing for that. I just saw her the other day. Okay, let's see. From Heather, Darina is her dog, is an Aussie. She's in my Dog Manners 2 class. I get to see her today for the first time in a couple months. How can we best prepare for our dog for people coming over for the holidays? She's really tough time with people coming into our house and then is anxious the entire time people are here. She never settles in, relaxes. So again, this kind of goes right back to you have a herding breed. So yes, they're anxious because people are coming in. This is one where you do want to talk to your vet about supplements and or meds, just to have that aspect of it. So really looking at it holistically. Using that safe space, giving Dorina options, so choice. So I would use the safe space till people are kind of more settled in and relaxed, then bringing her out for just a short period of time if she wants to come out, but giving her the option to leave whenever she wants. So again, it's kind of like ignore my dog, giving her positive experiences when people are over. So again, the safe space with these enrichment toys. It can be hard if your dog's like, I want to be like Velcroed to you as part of my anxiety response, and you're around all of these people. That can be really hard. So that's again where it's looking at, do I tether the dog to me? Do I have them muzzled if I'm worried about bites? Like, I'm really looking at management and trying to reduce the stress with stuff beforehand, right? Decompression, exercise, enrichment. In the middle, managing the interactions, and then afterwards decompression. But honestly, it's really for herding dogs, giving them choice, but reducing the stimulation. So noise masking, using the safe space is a big one. Right, check and chat, nothing in there that's new. From Janice, who has a dog named Charlie, what can I do to stop his itchy paws? This is another great question that I would say best person to ask is your veterinarian. However, I can give you a little bit of guidance on where to kind of start or what your vet will probably bring up. Itchy paws can be due to allergies. especially environmental allergies. So they're walking around and picking things up on their paws. So it's definitely something to talk to your vet about. It could also be food allergies that are causing itchy skin, and inflaming the paws. So you really want to talk to your vet and look at, is there an allergen in the environment or something that they're eating that is causing this response? If they're not itchy all over, then that can help your vet kind of figure out what it might be coming from. But it is definitely something to explore with your vet and could be allergies. So we'd be looking at that. Now, in the meantime, to prevent hotspots from happening, you can think about wrapping. I mean, I'll add the resource. Dr. Beth has some great options as far as trying to prevent licking. Behaviorally, if there's a medical reason, you're not going to train it out, right? That's like telling someone like who has chicken pox, like, stop itching. It's very hard, and dogs aren't aware of, like, if I keep licking and itching this, like, it will explode into a hot spot and then be worse. They're not thinking about that. They're just trying to, like, soothe the itch. So there's things you could do, wraps, you could do little booties, like you could try a cone if they're comfortable wearing a cone or something like that. But you need to talk to your vet about addressing it so that it's not as itchy to begin with. Good questions. From Linda with the dog Sadie Blue. It's a good name. My mini Aussie, it's all the herding breeds, is very protective of me. If another dog is near me, she will react in an aggressive way. I call it going gator. That's a good term for it. So it sounds like, from just that brief description, resource guarding, where you are the resource. It can also just be based in reactivity towards other dogs, whether that's fear reactivity or simply just not liking other dogs being near her. So your big thing here is management to start with, is preventing that from happening, because every time she reacts and goes gator, her brain is reinforcing itself as that is what she should do, right? So you don't want to keep triggering that behavior because then it gets harder and harder to address in the long term when they keep practicing it, right? So stopping rehearsal of the behavior is a big goal of management, as well as keeping other dogs safe and from preventing a bite history from being there. So then treatment for this would be behavior modification, where we work on changing her emotional response to dogs approaching you if you're the resource. There are ways to figure out if it's you as the resource or just dogs in general approaching her as the trigger. So you'd really want to work with a professional on this to make sure that you're not pushing her too far too fast, because again, we want to prevent her from going what we call over threshold, which is where she is lunging and going gator, right? So you want to work just under that. It can be really hard when the trigger is other dogs approaching, because now you have two variables to kind of control in the setup. So a lot of times dog aggression relies a lot on management. And then also beyond emotional associations, we then focus more heavily on what do I do instead of going gator when I see another dog approaching. So that might be you telling her to go to place, right? Which adds a distance between you and her and the other dog. Or, it might be go get this thing. You think about what can I do that's incompatible. So we work on training alternative behaviors and incompatible behaviors, which does have the benefit of creating more positive emotional associations. But we tend to focus more on that than we do on counter conditioning just the emotional response of the dog approaching, because that can be really tricky to get this set up right safely. But that does need guidance from a professional to make sure that everyone's safe and that you're getting the correct associations with the right things, if that makes sense. So it is definitely an in-depth behavior modification plan and tricky. But if there aren't other dogs in the house and it's just happening like when you go to the dog park or when you're at a friend's house or something, stop going to the dog park, right? Or don't bring her to your friend's house, or don't have your friends bring dogs over. So if it is something that's easily manageable like that, then a lot of times that resolves the issue because you're not triggering it. However, if you have other dogs in the home, that is an issue you have to really manage plus work on to make everyone less stressed as you go. So that was a very short overview of what a behavior plan for that would be. So like a little nutshell. Okay. From Nancy with dog Sadie. Oh, another Sadie. How to get a puppy to calmly greet guests. Great question. Puppies are hard. And they have like their brain is all feelings and no thinking. So they're just usually very excited. And then people don't help because they're like, yeah, and then they bend over and then they're petting the puppy for jumping and rewarding the jumping, which is erasing all the training you might have done with your puppy so far. So big thing here, management. We always start with management. How do I make sure my puppy doesn't practice jumping on people? Because even if people say, no, 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 off, 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 the puppy goes, oh, you touched me and you talked to me and you looked at me and that is exactly what I wanted. So jumping gets rewarded. Even if we're like, no, we're telling them off, they don't care. They love that. So you want to have them on leash if you can, or behind a baby gate, and tell guests this is what we're working on. We're practicing not jumping, because while they might be super cute at 20 pounds, when they're 90 pounds jumping, it won't be cute. So ask them to sit, give guests a little treat or a little piece of kibble, have them ask your puppy to sit, give them the kibble, give them attention. If puppy jumps, the consequence for jumping is they lose the thing they want. This is what we call negative punishment. We take away what they want to decrease the behavior. So we're taking away attention. We turn and we walk away. We totally ignore the dog. It doesn't get them what they want. They actually lose it, right? But when they give us what we do want, positive reinforcement, I want you to sit or stand nicely for attention, then you must make sure to reinforce that when it happens too, right? So manage the environment so they can't practice jumping as much as possible. Communicate to your guests. Here's how to say hi to my puppy. If you don't have the time, energy, space to do this well, put your puppy in their puppy playpen or their safe space for a while with something to do until everyone kind of comes in and gets more settled, and then maybe one at a time they can go say hi to puppy, or puppy comes out when you have time on leash, right? So really manage that. Teach your puppy what to do instead. How to prevent the unwanted behavior. Repeat, repeat, repeat. And then they will get better and better at greeting guests. It does take practice and repetition. It is not something, overnight, they just know. And then also what can happen is if you only practice being really calm with a puppy for greetings, then they're great with that. And the minute you go, huh? They're like, whoa. And they jump up on you. So in puppy classes, what I like to do is teach them like, yep, we're good if I'm calm. And now I'm gonna be a little bit more excited. Oh, you still don't jump? Good job. I give you attention and maybe a treat. And they get a little bit more excited. So you're just helping your puppy get better and better with different kinds of energy and interactions. So puppies, they're crazy. I love them. From Barbara with dogs Sunny and Cher, how to stop jumping and pawing. Same. We just talked about that. That's true for all ages of dogs. Puppies, adult dogs, same. From Vicky, meeting new dogs. Vicky has Tula. I love that name. We talked about that too. So meeting new dogs, really parallel walks, neutral interactions first before kind of more energetic play if they want to play. So teaching calm behavior, separation, and management. And then time to build up the familiarity. From Sue, we have two things going on with our senior rescues. One, not wanting to go on walks. Dog number one walks. Dog two prefers to stay home alone. And two, lots of begging, even though they are being fed the correct amount. How to break begging associated with the office desk, a place where I need to sit. Okay, great questions. So first question, not wanting to go on walks. Dog number one walks, and two prefers to stay home. Let dog number two stay home. And that's okay. If they're senior dogs, we want them to keep moving, but you can do things at home to keep them moving. So even if it's just getting up and having them walk around the house with you, if you have a yard, right? As long as they're getting some walks, if they're not wanting to walk at all, and that's the only exercise they're getting, like if you don't have a yard, they have to go out for walks, then I would ask the vet about pain. You want to anyway, you have senior dogs, but not wanting to walk, especially if it was something that they really were into before. So if they were like, yeah, I want to walk, and then it's a behavior change, then I would definitely recommend talking to your veterinarian and doing a pain evaluation. Pain is really hard to diagnose in dogs because it's not like they're just going to tell us where it hurts. And they tend to kind of shut down at the vet and be like, I'm fine, I'm not in pain, everything's fine. So you want to talk to your vet. Sometimes they'll do a pain med trial. But senior dogs, honestly, so many dogs even pre-seniors have osteoarthritis that's just undiagnosed or underdiagnosed pain. So really check for pain first, and then adjust expectations. If they don't want to go for a walk, they don't want to go for a walk. As long as they're getting their needs met in other ways, I think it's totally okay. So really looking at that. Now, again, if they're avoiding walks for other reasons, pain or even behavioral reasons, then maybe we'd want to address those, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. Number 2, lots of begging. Okay. I actually posted this on Facebook the other day because I had a client who was like, we don't allow begging. We got to stop the begging. And I laughed because literally for thousands and thousands of years, our dogs have learned that begging works. Like that is how they domesticated themselves and we domesticated them. There's whole debates on like how that actually happened. But like they literally begged at our fires, and we were like, oh, well, thanks for not killing me. And here's some meat. So begging is very, very self-reinforcing, not only in the moment, but also genetically. It is how they survive. Street dogs, the majority of dogs in the world, beg to survive. And they know how to work us humans so well to get what they want. I mean, tourists, yeah, they've got it figured out. So begging, you have to think about, I'm not going to train this out completely. However, can I teach my dogs to beg appropriately? Right? Like, what do you want that to look like? If you're at your desk, do you want them sitting on their bed somewhere else? Okay, well, then you need to teach go to place, and that's where they get treated. So they can beg from their beds, right? Which might be better than right underneath you. And maybe when you're sitting at your office desk, you give them something to do that's not begging so that you just preemptively prevent the begging. And that might be giving them a chew or a dental chew like once a day or whatever. Like you're giving them something to do that's appropriate that they can't do at the same time as begging. But begging, normal dog behavior, I think that we really need to reframe how we react to it. Yes, it's super rude if they're like, I am on you, or like licking your guest's hands and like jumping up on the table. That's inappropriate. But what can I have you do instead that works for both of us? So really thinking about, can I teach you go to bed? Can I teach you to do something instead of staring at me with puppy dog eyes or barking at me? What can I teach you to do instead that gets you what you want? And then how do I meet those needs so that you stop doing that in the first place, like at those times of day? Blocking off that environment. You don't get to come into the office, right? When I'm at my office desk. Sorry, because you're rude in here. And that's fine. Just make sure that they're separated and then they have something to do. Which honestly, most dogs are just gonna sleep. So really look at like thinking, what do I want to do instead? Okay. From Jody with the dog Loki. I know a lot of Lokis. How can we get Loki to stop being reactive to big dogs? He was attacked on 2 separate occasions, and we know that neighbors may have company with big dogs when we're walking. Yeah. This is again something that requires time and a behavior plan. So if you have one, please reach out to me if you see this recording or if you're here. I don't know if she's here. But I can look up local reactive rover or growly dog classes with a certified trainer because you want repetitions. So again, this isn't something that you're going to be able to fix like before Thanksgiving. So management is a big part of it. How do we walk Loki so that we don't see big dogs? Or how do we make sure there's enough distance between us and the big dog so he doesn't feel threatened and need to react? That's the first step of any reactive dog plan anyway, is figuring out the threshold and then staying beyond it. So management. And then we work on things like counter conditioning exercises with games like open bar, close bar, engage, disengage, latte, look at that, then enrichment. There's a lot of different techniques that can be used, and depending on the dog, we kind of mix those in. And then we also teach alternative and incompatible behaviors. So when you see a big dog, what do you do instead of reacting? Instead, you look at me and then we run away because I know that's what you want. Right. So you can do a lot of work with alternative behaviors where he gets what he wants, which is probably distance and space because he feels unsafe. And then he learns that he can trust you. And over time, that threshold distance gets a little bit more tolerable. But especially over the holidays, I would really like have your head on a swivel, practice emergency U-turns, like, hey, this way, and you run, and then there's a party as you run away, just so that if a big dog appears really close, you can just run the other way. Sometimes changing the time you're walking works well. Also, sniff spots can be really good for this too. If you're like, oh, there's people visiting with a big dog and they don't know the neighborhood, but they're letting their dog off leash, because why do people do that? They just do that. Go to a sniff spot instead of walks that week, right? While that dog's there. So then your dog gets to run around off leash in a safe area and not have those triggers and really decompression, lots of sniffing. So looking for alternatives too, just to kind of get through those times that there might be visiting dogs, because reactivity does take time. And every time that a dog goes over threshold and starts barking and going crazy, it does set you back a little bit as far as any work you've put in. So that's why management's so important. It's so tough though, especially because like it just sucks when dogs have been attacked by other dogs and like no one wants that to happen and you can't control it. And then you end up with this thing that you then have to deal with for the rest of your life. It's just awful. I feel so bad. Okay, I'm supposed to be done at 12:30. If you want, feel free to hop off, you guys, but I can go for another 10 minutes or so. Let's see. Oh, from Barbara with dog Mickey. My little Mickey is very friendly with people, kids, and other dogs. He's super quiet, not much of a lap dog, however. If I go out for more than 5 minutes, he starts howling like someone is trying to kill him and scratching at the door. I've tried all the usual recommended tips for dogs with anxiety. He didn't used to do this, leaving for short periods and coming back in. And no matter if it's 5 minutes or an hour, he's sitting by the door panting and acts like I've been away for hours. Any other suggestions would be welcome. I was thinking of getting another small dog so he has a buddy. Mickey is a Shih Tzu mix, and I've had him for 3 years without any problems. Okay, so this is also another one of those like complex behavior cases. Sounds like separation anxiety. Now, technically, because this is an anxiety disorder, I can't diagnose it officially. Only a veterinarian can do that. But I would say talk to your veterinarian about behavior medication if it's this bad. With the panting, with the howling and the scratching, so kind of those kind of severity symptoms, I would say let's get support on the veterinary side and the chemical side, because then all of the behavior modification, the true treatment, is going to be more effective and likely faster. And then also can maybe reduce that stress for him in his body as well when you start. So one thing I would say is getting another dog could fix it. It could also backfire, and then you have two dogs with separation anxiety. It's like it could go either way. It's not usually my recommended thing. But some people are like, no, let's try it. I want another dog anyway, and my dog does well with other dogs. There's a lot of other factors that go into that choice. I would say don't get a second dog just to fix the separation anxiety. Make sure there's other reasons and that you're ready for that, and be ready for that you might have two dogs with separation anxiety. That can happen. I've seen it happen. But in some cases, it's simply isolation distress, which is being alone is what causes this anxiety spike. But having anyone, whether that's another person, doesn't have to be mom or dad, or another dog around, means I'm not alone. And so that kind of solves the issue. However, be aware that if you have two dogs, there's sometimes that one dog is away at the vet office, or like things happen where the dogs are separated. So then you have the same problem. Honestly, with my two dogs, Fozzie has more anxiety about being separated from the other dog, Sookie, than from me. So it's something that we practice regularly to kind of keep that down, because she's 15 coming up, and I know that someday she won't be around. So it's one of those things that I need to make sure that he is able to cope with being left alone when she's not there, right? So kind of getting him used to that. So just be aware of that variable. Now, separation anxiety. It sounds like you started what we would call systematic desensitization, but you might have gone too fast through the steps, or you might have started too far along in the steps of your departure cues. So what this means is we have to teach a dog that everything that predicts a departure doesn't predict being left alone. So it doesn't predict the anxiety spiral, doesn't trigger that. So that might mean that when you brush your teeth in the morning, they start to go, oh, you're going to leave soon, like 45 minutes. I had one client who is the first trigger for anxiety in the dog was brushing his teeth. So the dog would start like following him everywhere once he brushed his teeth. So systematic desensitization is having him brush his teeth over and over throughout the day and not leaving until eventually it became a neutral cue. The dog goes, oh, you do that all the time, you weird human. Also great dental health after that. But that might be toothbrushing. Okay, now that's not a trigger. Your dog does not care. And then what do you do after that? You go put on your shoes. And then the dog gets up. Okay, well, now we need to put on your shoes, take off your shoes over and over until it's neutral. And you work through every little departure cue, right? And so if you were going out the door, but your dog was already anxious when you grabbed your keys, then you were starting too far along in the process. So you have to start and really evaluate at what point in my departure cue process, my routine, is my dog starting to spiral? And then you might even start a step before that. This is why having professional support is really important. Most separation anxiety cases are done online, actually, because then we consultants can watch live while you go through your departure so we can identify the body language and when we need to start. And then you just send videos back and forth of practice. It takes a long time. And it's exhausting. And I feel really bad for dogs who have that. And then they're people, because in the meantime, you can't leave your dog alone, because every time they're left alone, they get anxious and it erases any of the work you've done to help them feel better. So it is a very complex case, but we do offer a self-paced separation anxiety course online, but that also has an upgrade to include the live coaching. So happy to help you there or find a referral for you if you email me afterwards. Barbara. Okay. That's a tough one. Again, little nutshell of how to address separation anxiety. Okay. From Jane, who is Daisy May and Peanut. Not sure if this is your area of expertise, but would like some tips for anxiety. It is my expertise area. We've tried all the things and nothing works. Okay. Thunder shirts, pheromone spray, soft crate for security, prescription from vet, calming chews, treats, and more. So without knowing more about the type of anxiety, it is very hard for me to tell you like what might be missing. It really does have to be a holistic look. Like you can't just be like, oh, okay, well, we're going to add a prescription. It sounds like you've been trying so many things, but first we got to figure out the trigger. Is it sounds? Is it interactions? Is it handling? Is there any medical component, right? Is there pain that hasn't been addressed? Beyond just anxiety meds, does there need to be pain meds? Is there something going on? Seizures, like neurological issues. There's so many things that can contribute to behavior. Are there GI issues? The gut health and skin health are extremely linked to behavioral health. The gut produces serotonin, right? So there's a lot going on medically that could be affecting anxiety levels, right? So looking at like more of that medical picture, and then even with a prescription for anxiety meds from a vet, there are so many kinds of anxiety meds. And just like for humans, it can take a while to find the most effective one, or find the right dosage on one. So a lot of vets will often start with fluoxetine, which is just a generic for Prozac. It's an SSRI, so a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. I'm on an SSRI myself. They are amazing drugs. But sometimes they make anxiety worse if the dose is wrong. I've experienced that and I thought I was going crazy, and it made me way more sympathetic to dogs and cats and other animals who can't tell their person, I feel nuts, right? Like maybe this dosage is wrong. So really connecting with the vet and being like, the fluoxetine doesn't seem to be making a difference. Well, there's medications that we layer on top of fluoxetine that increase the effectiveness, rather than weaning them off that and then starting them up on something else. But it can be a journey to find the correct kind of medication, whether that's an SSRI or a tricyclic antidepressant, right? There's a bunch of different drug classes. And so a veterinarian, but honestly, a veterinary behaviorist is the best resource as far as those medications when it comes to behavior. Unfortunately, general practice vets don't get a lot of education in vet school on behavior. And so they rely a lot on veterinary behaviorists to do it. So it might be worth getting on the wait list for a vet behaviorist for that. Otherwise, we would need to do a lot of like, what's the trigger? What are we doing about it? How are we managing the environment to reduce the stress? How are we meeting the dog's needs? Right? Enrichment, exercise, what's their breed group? What are they missing? And then working on changing the emotional association for those dogs. Anxiety is tough, but there's so many things out there that I know it feels like we've tried everything. There's other things, and maybe we can try the same things, but tweak them a little bit as we go. It is definitely a journey, and it is exhausting. It is very hard to deal with those cases. So sorry to hear about your dog. Yeah, traveling. So she says travel anxiety and then harsh winds, thunder and lightning. Yeah. So again, we're looking at how do we create positive associations after we've managed that as much as possible. Okay. I'm just seeing because I've got to go teach group classes. So I'm just seeing if there's anything I haven't addressed. Oh, from Linda with her dog Filbert. Filbert is my dog's nephew, just so you all know. He is adorable. How do I keep Filbert busy while we're all eating? Easy. Enrichment toys, chews. She actually has a great setup. I've been to her house. She has a puppy playpen for Filbert. So one, he's in there when people come in the door, so then he doesn't run up and jump. And also it helps, he's helped, it helps him with his barking because he's a cardigan corgi. They bark at everything. But instead of barking at people, he's learned I stay quiet and that's how I get out to greet them. So using that as a great little place to be during dinner while people are eating is perfect. Giving him a chew or something to do in there. Escaping out the front door. We talked about that. Talked about table scraps that dogs can have. So those fruits and veggies that are safe, white meat. Amy with the
The
dog.
articles that we'll include too that go over like even beyond holiday, some things that you can enjoy. And one tip that we've been using, especially if you've got a very hungry dog, is to supplement with some green beans.
Mm,
It took a couple tries, but she now loves them. Doesn't care about carrots that much.
yeah.
We're still learning, but
Yeah. Suki doesn't want anything green. Ozzy will try everything once. He doesn't like blueberries though now. So
hmm.
things. But yeah, we'll send those out. I got through almost all of the questions sent in, I think. A lot of them were like repeats from the presentation. But if anyone has any questions about anything, shoot me an email, let us know. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. We should have this sent out to you tomorrow with all the bonus resources, but so good to see everyone's faces. And have a great Thanksgiving, and we will talk to you later.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Kathy. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.